Welcome to Student Success Stories, the podcast where we spotlight academic excellence at Baylor. I'm your host, Carroll Crowson.
When I was in the 4th grade, I remember drawing a picture of myself with headphones on. It was for an assignment about who we wanted to be when we grew up. Well, I wanted to be a radio DJ, which I guess is 1989's version of a podcast host. But I didn't become a radio DJ. Instead, I began my professional journey as a college career counselor. You see, I've always felt that a big thread of my life has been wrapped up in helping others discover who they are and how they can impact the world. I believe that if we understand our own gifts, the world can be a better place. I got to hear directly from our students about the struggles and challenges they were facing as they navigated their future. Some were confident about what was next. Others weren't. But over and over, the thing that I kept hearing were things like, "Oh, why didn't I know about this academic resource earlier? Oh, I wish I knew I could have an academic mentor." You see, we tend to front-load this information to students at the beginning of the school year. But in September, everybody's got a 4.0. Sometimes when we share this information during summer orientation, students aren't sure if they're really going to be the ones that are going to need to utilize it. But after that first test comes back or that paper, they realize, oh, maybe I do need some help. But by then, they forgot about all the wonderful resources we've told them. It made me think about being a new parent. I loved listening to podcasts in my car on my commute. It was literally the only time I had by myself, my little oasis in the world. But as a brand new mom, when I had parenting questions, I loved hearing from other moms with children about the same age or a little bit older than my son. It was so reassuring to hear their wisdom. And then I thought, what if we could give these sort of resources to our students on demand and right when they needed them? When I started this podcast, I had 2 hunches. The first was that when students are stressed and school is not going the way they want it to, they will revert back to strategies that they have been using even though they haven't been as helpful as they would like. They don't have the space to think of something new. How can I have a new plan when I'm already stressed? My other hypothesis was that in any given class, there are students looking at other students who make better grades and thinking, I'm sure they're doing the same thing I'm doing. They're just smarter. And I would say that that probably isn't the case. In fact, these students are doing really different things to get different outcomes. My hope is that by having students share their routines, I can peel back the curtain a little bit and help all of our students understand the realities of college life. I can show them how these students have been in similar situations and they can envision how to implement these strategies in their own life. To find students who could help me with this, I ran an advanced search and navigate for students with good GPAs. And I sent them out a really low-stakes communication campaign, just asking them to reply yes or no if they want to be featured in a podcast. If they replied yes, I put them on a watch list, and then I sent them out a Qualtrics survey with all the questions I planned to ask in my interview. Once they finished filling out those questions, I added them to an appointment campaign. I had made availability for podcast interviews so they could just make an appointment really easily. Now, I did all this in the summer, and I used video chat for most of our interviews. So whether they were in Waco, home for the summer, or in Thailand, we found a way to connect. It was great. I asked about things like their morning routine, favorite study spots, time management strategies, and study skills. Listen to Joel, who's a pre-med, wake up to some of the realities of college life.
I remember being in high school and I went and visited a friend at a different university, and it was a Saturday afternoon, and I saw some people in there doing homework, and I was just like, wow, I will absolutely never, ever do schoolwork on a Saturday. That sounds like the worst afternoon. And then as soon as I get to college, almost immediately realizing that I needed those weekends, I needed those Friday afternoons and those Saturdays to get my schoolwork done.
For those students who are interested in the most competitive fields, this is going to give them a glimpse of what reality is. Their path is going to require sacrifice. They're not just going to get to go home and watch Netflix for several hours before getting to their studies. But for the most part, the tips the students share are very approachable, like she studies right after class reviewing her notes. Oh, I have 30 minutes for that. Or, oh, he uses the Pomodoro technique. I think there's an app for my phone for that. I also ask things like, what do you do for study breaks? What do you do outside of class? Even their favorite coffee order. I learned what an almond joy is. And if you're needing a little sugar rush with your caffeine, you're gonna like it too. There was one student who even mentioned the impact that a faculty member had made on her. And I was able to email the podcast to that faculty member. I said, your student talked about you in our interview, and I'd love for you to take a listen. Here's the link. He wrote me back that completely made his day. There are just so many neat things that this podcast allows for. It was important for me to dispel the myth of perfection. I want them to hear from other students who have made mistakes, who have encountered failure, and learned from those experiences. So I always ask, sometimes our greatest teacher or challenges we've overcome or mistakes we've learned from, is there anything since coming to Baylor that has taught you a lot? I literally titled an episode in season 2, How Dropping Chemistry Changed Everything. Lauren, a biology major, talked about how retaking that class made her feel.
By that point, not only was it just felt like embarrassing because it was a waste of my money, like I shouldn't have had to do it again, and also I should know how to be successful in college at this point. It's been a year. That's when I decided, I was like, you know what, you don't know how to study. And you get super frustrated when something's even like an inkling harder than it's supposed to be. I would say that was like my big moment where I had decided, instead of just like becoming a student that gets by, I wanted to be a student that does really well.
So many students feel like their identity is wrapped up when things didn't go the way they wanted it to, and they have a hard time moving past that. If we can find a way to normalize this experience and show how it can make us stronger and learn more about ourselves, I thought that would be really exciting. So we're constantly re-envisioning how we interact with students through the podcast. This fall, we've launched a new series where we're breaking up a specific topic from multiple interviews, like when they talk about time management. These episodes we're releasing are going to be shorter to give students easier access to the information they're most needing. We have an Instagram page where every week we post about our new episodes, and some students who have been featured on the podcast actually take over our Instagram stories to speak directly with the campus.
Hey, this is Professor Rogers, and she has some advice for you.
Happy Halloween. Communication is the key. If you want to get a great grade in a class, if you want to do better in a class, communicate with your professor or talk to us. We want to help.
Our stories are powerful. I hope you tune in. They're worth hearing.